Warning: today's program contains a story about domestic abuse and suicidal ideation. If you're a victim of domestic abuse or sexual violence, please call the National Domestic Abuse Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. If you or someone you love is contemplating suicide, please call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255. Please get help.
For the hardest-hitting show in talk radio, the true progressive voice since 2012. This is Southpaws.
Six days ago, Russia's Vladimir Putin sought to shake the very foundations of the free world, thinking he could make it bend to his menacing ways. But he badly miscalculated. He thought he could roll into Ukraine and the world would roll over. Instead, he met with a wall of strength he never anticipated or imagined. He met the Ukrainian people.
Those are comments from President Joe Biden from the State of the Union address on March 1st, 2022. Comments about the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And we'll get to a little bit more of Joe Biden's comments during the State of the Union speech in just a minute here. Welcome to Southpaws on the Pacifica Radio Network. We are the leaders of the revolution. My name is Darren Gibson. I'm your co-host.
And my name is Jack Prince, your fellow co-host.
Yeah, we've got a lot to talk about. A little bit of State of the Union stuff. We have a triple hammer time segment this week, and we're finally going to get to a very lengthy story about former Michigan House Speaker Lee Chatfield and allegations that have been made against him by his sister-in-law. This is going to be really just hard stuff to listen to at times, so that's why we had the warning put on the beginning of this show. So if you have young children, you're probably going to want to shoo them out of the room for a few minutes as we discuss this story. Before we get started with today's show, a couple of reminders. You can follow us on social media by going to facebook.com/Southpaws Radio Show. You can follow us on Twitter at Southpaws Radio. You can follow us on Tumblr at southpawsradioshow.tumblr.com. You can follow us on YouTube by doing a search for Southpaws Radio. You can become a patron of the show by going to patreon.com/Southpaws Radio. You can listen to the show anytime at Spreaker, Stitcher, Apple Podcast, or Reason.fm by doing a search for Southpaws. Once you found our logo, you found us. We send links to our weekly episodes to our Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, and YouTube accounts. You can listen to us on Global Community Radio Channel 1 every Saturday night at 11 Eastern, and you can listen to us on great Pacifica stations, including KCEI in Taos, New Mexico, KZGM in Kabul, Missouri, and KEPJ in San Antonio, Texas. So please be sure to listen to us there as well. So
yeah, Darren, I can't wait for this show, particularly I've been waiting for weeks to get at Mr. Lee Chatfield. I know that's not our order, but I know you've done a lot of work on that. Looking forward to it. I'm just going to ask you one thing.
Yes.
Do you have Cher's song for backup music for that that sings, the only one who could ever reach me was the son of a preacher man? Can we line that up? Are you familiar with the song?
Yes, I'm familiar with it, and I'm pretty sure I do not have that in my collection. Are
Well,
you sure
while
that
you're
was
going
Cher,
through
or was that, I want to say that was Janis Joplin, wasn't it?
Huh. I thought it was Cher. If we can't, you can line it up. I'll hum that while you're talking because, folks, it's going to be great.
Yeah, I actually do not have that in my collection.
All right.
All right. So, yeah, let's go ahead and start with some State of the Union stuff here. Biden spoke on national television Tuesday night on March 1st. We were actually recording this show on Friday, March 4th. And he talked a little bit. He began the speech talking about Russia invading Ukraine. He also mentioned some other topics here, and I have some audio clips He actually talked about how trickle-down economics has not worked for the last 40 years. So let's go ahead and play that clip for you right now.
For the past 40 years, we were told the tax break for those at the top and benefits would trickle down and everyone would benefit. But that trickle-down theory led to a weaker economic growth, lower wages, bigger deficits, and a widening gap between the top and everyone else in nearly a century. Look, Vice President Harris and I ran for office, and I realize we have fundamental disagreements on this, but ran for office with a new economic vision for America. Invest in America, educate Americans, grow the workforce, build the economy from the bottom up and the middle out, not from the top down, because we know when the middle class grows, the poor have a way up and the wealthy do very well.
Well, that does sound nice. The problem is, does the rest of the party agree with that? We've seen in the past that they don't, to be honest with you.
Yeah, the theory is correct that the rich corporate conservatives don't allow anything to fall out of their pockets. Trouble is, there's a lot of rich limousine liberals that have the same syndrome.
Yes, and they're all in power at the DNC.
I just got a kick out of watching the yachts that have been confiscated worth hundreds of millions of dollars.
By Germany, of all places.
They may bump into Betsy DeVos's boat out there somewhere.
God, wouldn't that be nice? Yeah, in Germany, of all places. What the hell? Germany is seizing these.
Yeah, right.
Oh, man. He did also talk about health care. This one's going to be a lengthier clip. It runs about 2 minutes, 40 seconds, and I want to play it in its entirety because obviously health care is important to me, having a bunch of diseases and a couple of surgeries coming up. So let's listen to what President Biden had to say about health care.
To fight inflation will lower your cost and lower the deficit. 17 Nobel laureates in economics said my plan will ease long-term inflationary pressures. Top business leaders, and I believe most Americans support the plan. And here's the plan. First, cut the cost of prescription drugs. We pay more for the same drug produced by the same company in America than any other country in the world. Just look at insulin. 1 in 10 Americans has diabetes. In Virginia, I met a 13-year-old boy, the handsome young man standing up there, Joshua Davis. He and his dad both have type 1 diabetes, which means they need insulin every single day. Insulin costs about $10 a vial to make. That's what it costs the pharmaceutical company. But drug companies charge families like Joshua and his dad up to 30 times that amount. I spoke with Joshua's mom. Imagine what it's like to look at your child who needs insulin to stay healthy and have no idea how in God's name you're going to be able to pay for it. What it does to your family, but what it does to your dignity, your ability to look your child in the eye, to be the parent you expect yourself to be. I really mean to think about that. That's what I think about. You know, yesterday, Joshua's here tonight, but yesterday was his birthday. Happy birthday, buddy, by the way. For Joshua and 200,000 other young people with type 1 diabetes, let's cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month so everyone can afford it. And drug companies will do very, very well, their profit margin. While we're at it, I know we have great disagreements on this floor with this. Let's let Medicare negotiate the price of prescription drugs. They already set the price for VA drugs. Look, the American Rescue Plan is helping millions of families with Affordable Care Act plans to save them $2,400 a year on their health premiums. Let's close the coverage gap and make these savings permanent.
Actually, I've got a better idea. How about if we just have Medicare for all, single-payer universal health care, and let's get rid of all the insurance companies?
Seems like I've heard that idea expressed by a politician in the last vague history. What was his name? Little balding guy.
Little balding grandpa from Vermont by the name of Bernie Sanders.
Yeah. That's become archaic. I mean, really, which is the most sensible and global way to handle escalating medical costs.
Yeah.
I got a prescription filled the other day, and if I hadn't had insurance for a month of I don't even tell you what the prescription is, over $1,000 for 30 little pills.
Yeah.
People can't afford it.
I know. I take a injectable drug for type 2 diabetes. I'll just mention it. I take Victoza. If I didn't have insurance, that would run $500 plus a month. And it's ridiculous. Yeah. My mom takes Entresto. She's got a bad heart. Without insurance, that runs close to $600 a month.
They've said with insulin, most of the people cut what they should be taking. They reduce it to stretch the money. They put their life on the line.
And even with my mom's insurance, it'll cover it at a lower cost for about the first 7 or 8 months. Then she hits something in her coverage called the donut hole, where the insurance only covers 75%. You pay the other 25%. So in January of this year, her 30-day supply of Entresto costs $42. By the time August hits, she's in the donut hole. That same drug runs $156.
Yeah. I think we should change the name. Take the F off and put an H on. So it's the pharmacy, not the pharmacy.
Yeah.
People get ruined at that desk. Forget the betting booths. I mean, seriously, as bad as those are, people get ruined.
I like that, the pharmacy, and that's about it, too.
Well, folks, in case that catches on, like our freedom did, remember today is March the 4th, and you heard it first, pharmacy, your pharmacy store at Myers.
Yep. Or Rite Aid, Walgreens, wherever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I will definitely write a note about that. And I should just tell you, Jack, you know this. I haven't mentioned this on air, at least I don't think I have. I have been changing my diet. I've been eating more of a plant-based diet, something you've been getting on me for years about.
Good.
And I've lost 20 pounds since mid-December.
That's fantastic.
Drinking water. I have been avoiding soda. Like the warden said to Johnny Cash in the movie Walk the Line, the Folsom Prison warden says, I'm a Coca-Cola man. Well, that was me. I was a Coca-Cola man. Not anymore. The only thing I drink is water except for 1 cup of coffee in the morning. Outside of that, it's essentially water all day or some type of a juice.
Well, Darren, I congratulate you. And just that one increment where you said you just drink water except for a cup of coffee, that alone can have great benefit.
Definitely. And I'm feeling it, too. I can see it.
Sure. Yeah.
It's nice to finally be under 270 pounds for the first time in, God, I don't know how long.
And there's some delicious dishes out there. I got to tell you. Just some fantastic vegan entries that are as good as anything I've had on a meat diet. And I mean that sincerely. I know people think, oh, you're saying that. No, they're phenomenal, and it's spreading. I think McDonald's has a sandwich out now. I haven't seen it yet that they say is really, really tasty.
Yeah, that's plant-based.
It's plant-based, yeah.
Yeah.
They have to. The demand is that great. They wouldn't do it, folks, just to appease a very small segment of the population, I assure you.
Yeah.
If they didn't think it was going to be economical, they wouldn't try it.
Yeah, we talked off air about KFC now has a chicken patty that is made out of plants.
Mm-hmm.
And, we've talked about the Impossible Whopper for years.
Yeah.
So.
And folks, the food industry, I don't want to go down this road too far.
Yeah.
The dairy industry and the meat industry, they are at war trying to contain the benefits of a non-meat diet. Mm-hmm. They do not want you to know how much you can gain longevity-wise. So I'm glad what you're doing, Darren. Very glad.
Yeah, I haven't quite totally kicked the hamburger habit yet. I can tell you the last burger that I had was, 2 weeks ago when I was at lunch with Joe Elder, but I actually had water with my meal.
There you go. Yeah.
Yep.
It's a win-win.
Yep, it sure is. Speaking of winners, we might as well get to our next segment.
Stop! Hammer time!
Oh yeah, it's hammer time. It's time to drop the hammer on the douchebag of the week, and we've got 3 of them for you this week. We might as well start off with the first 2. Winners number 1 and 2, no particular order. Representative Lauren Boebert, cuckoo, out of Colorado, and Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, cuckoo, out of Georgia. They get the award for basically mocking and talking all during Biden's speech out loud. They were heckling the president. Well, they were heckling Biden.
Yeah.
Especially when Biden was talking about his son, Beau Biden.
It's the most unabashed, idiotic, insulting, juvenile behavior possibly on the floor. I've watched many a State of Union, and I'm not young. Mm-hmm. Nothing comes close to it.
No, it was disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
Just absolutely, totally. Well, then just take a look at the 2 of them. They're both disgusting. I have seen an interesting meme that's starting to float around Facebook. It got started over on Twitter. And somebody took a screenshot of Boebert and Greene on the floor yelling when they got their mouths open, and they compared them to a couple of blow-up sex dolls. I would post it on my personal Facebook, but I know somebody would report it and I'd get banned for 30 days. So, no, I'm not going to do it.
I find nothing sexy about either one of them.
No, they're ignorant. I said it before a couple weeks ago on this show. I find intelligence absolutely sexy. There is absolutely zero sexiness about either of those 2. Because they're both just brain dead. I'm surprised they're able to walk and function.
Maybe that's why Boebert's husband was compelled to flash his tallywhacker to teen girls.
Oh, jeez. Oh, God. Oh, taking a page out of Anthony Weiner's book? I don't know. And then there's the real dick. Winner number 3 this week is Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, cuckoo, or as you like to call him, Governor Death Sentence. He's still on his anti-mask campaign and even chided and scolded some college students for wearing masks at an event that he was speaking at. Let's take a listen to this clip. They caught it on a microphone. I love this.
You do not have to wear those masks. I mean, please take them off. Honestly, it's not doing anything, and we got to stop with this COVID theater. So if you want to wear it, fine, but this is ridiculous.
Oh, the masks don't do anything, and we need to end this COVID theater. Yeah. No, we need to end you being the governor of Florida. We need to put you in the unemployment line because you're an asshole. Unbelievable. So
he's an a-hole, but he is number 2 in the GOP ranking for the presidential election in 24.
Yeah.
So just think of the lineup. You talk about murder's row.
Yeah.
This guy, you know why the Republicans like the guy? Because he's totally and completely arrogant. He's as arrogant as Trump and maybe a better speaker.
Yeah. Not as vulgar either. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're lined up. I mean, that's who would it be number 3? Want to take a guess on number 3?
Who?
It's the Chase. What's his first name?
Oh,
Jim?
No, that you're thinking of a former co-host of this show. Are you thinking Madison Cawthorn?
No. He's out from Missouri. I don't know. I can't even think.
Oh God, I can't think.
He's
of
the guy that
either.
gave the thumbs up on January 6th when the idiots were storming the castle there.
Oh God. Well, that could have been any of them because they were all into it. Even though they want to say now, oh no, that was wrong of what happened there. Oh God. Speaking of the presidential race, first off, let's go ahead and wrap up this segment. So to Lauren Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Ron Death Sentence, we have this message for you.
Don't be a douchebag.
Yeah, you got that right. Especially you, Governor Death Sentence. God. Just get on college kids. Oh, you don't need to wear that mask. It doesn't do anything. Well, that's not what science says. But back to the election real quick. Did you happen to watch Lester Holt's interview with Bill Barr on NBC Nightly News Thursday?
I didn't see it. No.
They aired a partial replay of it Friday morning on the Today Show, and Lester asked him about the big lie, and Barr said that he told Trump that the spreading of the election lies, he said it was bullshit, and that they shouldn't have been shoveling it in as much as they were. And it's just amazing. So now even Bill Barr, the accomplice, is now speaking out against his former master. I just don't get it. Are they finally seeing the writing on the wall, or are they just trying to cover their own ass?
Well, as long as Trump has that credit card in his back pocket that says, I can guarantee you 41% of the vote. We have that many races south of Mason-Dixon line and a few north of it, obviously. And that kind of political gift, that guaranteed political support, the Repugs have trouble getting away from that. They can run any campaign they want. They can spend as little money as they want. If they get kissed by the devil with this, if Trump endorses them. And so that's the only thing that's holding them back.
Yeah.
Just logistical politics, ugly politics.
Yeah.
Barr's got nothing to lose. He's not running for anything, right?
That's very true. Yeah. Trump slammed Barr's interview with Lester Holt, called him lazy, said he was a terrible attorney general, called him lazy, called him a bunch of names in a 3-page written letter to NBC News. So, God. Oh, somebody needs to take Trump's crayons away from him so he doesn't write any more letters.
Well, they say they've got the criminal. They're about to. I don't know. You hear a lot of it, but the recent disclosures this week of Trump interfering with the election process, trying to overthrow the election, and I don't know what else they have to have.
I know. Well, should we get on to some more scummy politicians?
Why not?
Let's get to this. You've been chomping at the bit for the last couple of weeks to get to this story. This is an ongoing story, and we're going to start at the beginning. This was published by Bridge, Michigan, Bridge Magazine, on January 7th of this year. It's an article by Kelly House and Jonathan Osting. This is out of Lansing, Michigan. Listen to this, folks. Former Michigan House Speaker Lee Chatfield manipulated and sexually assaulted the teenage girlfriend of his younger brother when she was a student at the Christian academy where he taught, the woman said she has told police. Michigan State Police and the Lansing Police Department are investigating the criminal complaint filed by the woman, who is now Chatfield's sister-in-law. She said the encounters continued for more than a decade into 2021. Lee Chatfield, a pastor's son whose website was emblazoned with the slogan Faith, Family, Service before it went offline earlier in January, was the youngest Michigan House Speaker in more than a century when legislative colleagues elected him to the powerful position at the age of 30 in 2018. But behind the squeaky clean image, Chatfield took advantage of the girl's vulnerabilities when she was a high school student and continued to sexually assault her throughout his political tenure in Lansing, including allegedly inside his Capitol office. That is according to, again, his sister-in-law, Rebecca Chatfield.
Oh, man.
That was a series of interviews that she gave exclusively to Bridge, Michigan.
The hair on the back of my neck is standing up. The depth of hypocrisy of this guy who taunted his homeschooling, his biblical training, his family values, his dad being the minister up there, just this absolute crispy that, instead of a Christian, he is what I would call the poster face of GOP hypocrisy. Mm-hmm. The guy had only one defense, Darren, and that was that this was supposedly consensual. Oh, okay. Yeah. So you did have sex. I guess what's the legal age? 16?
16, but there's a caveat to that. We'll get to that in just a little bit here, because they do mention it in the article. Do you mind if I continue?
No, go ahead.
Rebecca Chatfield, who's now 26, said this to Bridge, Michigan, quote, "He destroyed me and has controlled my life since I was 15 or 16, the past 10 to 11 years. And I know the only way to get justice for this is to come forward and to file a criminal complaint against him." End of quote.
Good for her.
Yes.
Good for her.
Rebecca Chatfield told Bridge she documented her allegations in a criminal complaint filed last month with police in Lansing, where she lives. The city declined to release the complaint to Bridge under the state's public records law, saying Monday that disclosure would interfere with an ongoing investigative proceeding. The Lansing City Pulse first reported the existence of the police report on January 6th. Lansing police immediately began investigating the complaint and are currently coordinating with Michigan State Police for accusations in jurisdictions outside of the city of Lansing. That's according to city spokesperson Robert Merritt. Shannon Banner, a spokesperson for the Michigan State Police, confirmed that state investigators in northern Michigan are reviewing the complaint. Lee Chatfield could not be reached for comment Thursday or Friday directly or through family members. Calls to his cell phone prompted an automated message that the wireless caller you are calling is not available. An email sent to an account linked to his personal website bounced back, indicating the address no longer exists. But in a statement Friday, Lee Chatfield's lawyer characterized the interactions with, quote, "the woman who is now claiming she was raped," end of quote, as a consensual affair when they were both adults. The lawyer also stated Chatfield had multiple extramarital affairs. So let's just stop there for a minute.
Yeah, let's just stop right there.
Let's just say that the allegations are bogus, which I believe her. I'm sorry, I believe her.
Oh, hey, without a doubt. Don't even say doubt.
But even without her allegations, this guy's lawyer just copped to his client committing extramarital affairs for years. Sounds like Christian family values to me, doesn't it?
Yeah, me too. Yeah, not only are we talking sexual affairs, by his own admission, he was having a consensual sexual relationship with his brother's girlfriend, who he would then later marry.
And that
so
continued.
You tell me how damaging that would be if it was consensual.
Yeah.
And these Christians that use their position of power, their so-called godly position of power for sexual gratification, is the most disgusting thing. And then you wear your white cloak of righteousness, which he did. I remember him bragging about being a minister, a soccer coach there in his daddy's Christian school. Yeah. You could take this a step farther and go right after these private Christian schools. You know what I mean? They got two buses in the back of a converted warehouse. They got a gym there, and they call that an education. They're rampant, especially up in the north. And I hope that this gets some legs. Have you noticed, though, a real dearth of any real media coverage of this for weeks, other than the Bridge magazine?
I know that Wood TV covered when one of his staffers, the state police, raided one of his staffers' homes looking for evidence, and then raided one of his brother's homes. So that has received a little bit of coverage, but not anywhere to the degree it should.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I did see an article, I think it was MLive, that quoted two supporting testimonies for Chatfield. A friend, somebody that was a friend of the girl, maybe. I'm not completely sure. Yeah. And I called them. I got his name off the article, and I got a hold of him. I said, wasn't there a term called balanced journalism at one time that we had in America? Am I mistaken?
I love you, Jack.
Well, he said there's been nobody willing to come forth and speak against Chatfield.
Oh, now that's wrong. That's wrong.
Oh, I know it's wrong.
I got it right here. Let me continue this real quick.
You got it.
Yeah. Attorney Mary Chartier said this in response to the claims leveled against Lee Chatfield. Quote, their affair lasted for years, but they were both consenting adults. Mr. Chatfield deeply regrets the decisions he has made. It has caused great pain to his wife and family, and they are working through this together. But he did not assault this woman in any manner during their years-long adult relationship. He intends to vigorously fight these false claims. End of quote. By the way, after the Bridge Magazine article came out, the attorney did not respond to a request for an interview. The former Speaker of the Michigan State House, who is a Republican out of Levering, left office at the end of 2020 when term limits prevented him from seeking re-election. He has been encouraged to run for higher office, but is not poised to be on the ballot in 2022. And he probably won't be ever again if these allegations turn out to be true. Rusty Chatfield, Lee's father and the founder and administrator at the church and school where his son taught, told Bridge in a brief phone call Friday, quote, the allegations are false, end of quote, and he declined to further answer questions. Rebecca Chatfield first approached Bridge with her story in late December after she filed her complaint with the Lansing police. In multiple interviews spanning several hours, she said Lee Chatfield initiated unwanted sexual contact with her when she was a 15 or 16-year-old student at Northern Michigan Christian Academy. The private school is in Burt Lake in Sheboygan County, part of a campus that also includes Rusty Chatfield's church, Northern Michigan Baptist Bible Church.
Oh, man.
Lee Chatfield taught and coached soccer at the school before entering state politics.
He taught all right.
Rebecca Chatfield told Bridge that the assaults continued for years before and after the Chatfield family pressured her and Lee Chatfield's youngest brother, Aaron Chatfield, to marry when they were both 19. Let me remind you, she is now 26. Rebecca,
hey, if you don't think this is symptomatic of Christian hypocrisy, we just shared on this show, Southpaws, no more than a couple of weeks ago, the incident at Hillsdale College where the father was having sex with his son's wife for years, resulting in a suicide. I believe her suicide.
Yes.
That was boxed up as very few people have ever heard of that.
Yes.
And this has gotten awfully quiet, what you're reading to me. There's been no, that I can see, subsequent articles since this opening salvo.
Well, there's more here. Let me continue. Rebecca Chatfield said she kept the incident secret for more than a decade because she was too ashamed and fearful to tell anyone, including friends, family members, even her husband. She told Bridge she did not keep a diary, text, or any other writings or evidence of her encounters with Lee, saying she feared that Aaron, her husband, or others would discover them. She said she finally shared what happened with her husband Aaron, her mother, and some family and friends in December after the emotional trauma became unbearable. That was also when she reached out to Lansing police about Lee Chatfield. Rebecca Chatfield said she was a vulnerable high schooler from a struggling family when Lee Chatfield took her under his wing, allowing her to stay overnight at his family home with his wife and their young children, who Rebecca sometimes babysat. She told Bridge, quote, I had a lot of family stuff going on in my life. My dad was a recovering alcoholic, and so I believe that Lee used that against me and helped take advantage of me. So he would manipulate me. He would mess with my emotions. End of quote.
Yeah.
What began with unwanted touches in his basement stairwell eventually turned into unwanted sex, and the alleged assaults continued, according to Rebecca, quote, more times than I can count, end of quote, over the ensuing years. She told Bridge she could not recall precisely when in high school the touching progressed to intercourse. She said that she eventually stopped resisting. She said she's coming forward now to publicly accuse her brother-in-law, in part to encourage other vulnerable young women to speak up in similar situations. She also said she feared that once her police report became public, the encounters would be painted as consensual, which did happen, making it more important for her own voice to be heard. Bridge Magazine, for that matter, every legitimate news outlet, does not generally identify people who allege that they were sexually assaulted without their permission, which Rebecca Chatfield provided to Bridge. Michigan criminal law generally puts the age of consent to sex at 16. However, Michigan law also makes it a crime-free teacher to have any type of sexual penetration with a student under the age of 18, though some charges can only be brought within 10 years after an alleged crime. Rebecca Chatfield's attorney, Jamie White, with White Law PLLC, said Thursday that his firm has been in contact with the Lansing Police Department and Michigan State Police, and that because of jurisdictional matters, the case could ultimately end up in the hands of the FBI. Wouldn't that be sweet justice right there? A federal investigation.
As long as some justice to this scumbag.
Yep. White said his firm had obtained a private investigator and will, quote, devote any resources we have to address it, end of quote. Mm-hmm. White also said that he has recommended investigators look into possible misuse of public funds, quote, to support behavior that is extremely inappropriate, end of quote. He declined to elaborate. So that could be where a House investigation comes in, and that could be real interesting. Aaron Chatfield, Rebecca's husband, also spoke on the record with Bridge in December. He said he supports his wife. He also said that he did not know about the alleged assaults by his brother, but had suspicions years ago about his brother's close behavior with Rebecca. Aaron Chatfield told Bridge that his brother had few moral boundaries when it came to women. He said he worked for a time in Lansing as an unofficial driver for his politically powerful brother, and said part of his job was taking Lee Chatfield to strip clubs or evening rendezvous with various women inside and outside of government, including a former staffer. I'm going to stop right there real quick.
This testimony from her brother, put a fork in Lee. That's all. Yeah. What we just heard.
When you're
it does any better than a 16-year-old having consensual sex for years with a teacher, and this guy drove Lee around to strip clubs.
Yes.
Well, after he pontificated all day about family values.
Exactly.
It's incredible.
Let me just tell you real quickly. Once upon a time, I worked for a couple of months at Omar's in Lansing, which is a strip club. They're right down the street from the Michigan Capitol. You walk out the front door, you can see the Capitol Dome.
Yep.
Right from the strip club.
I'm from Lansing.
And I have heard all sorts of stories. I never saw any politicians that I recognized in the time that I worked there, but I have heard stories of lots of politicians from both sides of the aisle hanging out at Omar's and drinking and carousing and whatever.
Well, I don't doubt it. I mean, I don't doubt Lee's involvement is exactly the way this woman has described it. I know there's a machine, the Republican machine is throwing as much dirt to try and bury this on from the media as they possibly can. I just hope it gets the full light of day.
Yep. Aaron Chatfield, who's also 26, said, quote, Lee portrays himself as a family tradition conservative guy who believes in the Bible, and the Bible is so important. No, it couldn't be further from who my man was as a person. End of quote.
Damning.
Yes, indeed. I'm going to skip this. They also talked to Paul Chatfield, who is another younger brother of Lee Chatfield. Here's his comments on it. He said, quote, what she is saying, I don't believe, end of quote. He added, quote, the best case scenario is I'm disappointed in his brother, end of quote, Lee Chatfield. So he believes that Lee engaged in inappropriate behavior with Rebecca, but he thinks that it was consensual. So, man, this is going to divide the family up. It already has. You know, when your younger brother says, hey, I believe what she says, you know, that's going to make...
This is the juiciest revelation against the speaker, the Republican speaker, and I want the full impact. You know, I looked at the comments that Trump made about Putin as being a genius and applauding his his claim of the provincial independence of those two areas in Ukraine, that it was just a stroke of genius. And, these kinds of moments only come along once in a while where you get a Republican in the trap that leads in, or you get a quote from Trump that completely backfired on him. Mm-hmm. Now that we see churches being blown up and hospitals and schools in Ukraine and the ravages of war, that comment, the Democrats should paste that on the highways. I think Putin is a genius. Quote, Donald Trump, 6 days before an unwarranted land invasion and destruction of civilian property and deaths. Put it on the billboard. Take the Democrats, hey, listen, take the story about Chatfield and elucidate it, promulgate it. It's not being done. If the shoe was on the other foot, you would be beaten senseless by the Republicans.
Absolutely.
You would be.
Absolutely. Let me continue real quickly here. Rebecca Chatfield, then Rebecca Leonard, said she was in 4th grade when her family first joined the Chatfield-run church. Her family was reeling from her parents' divorce and her father's alcoholism. She said her family had recently left a Gaylord Baptist church that would later become embroiled in a nationwide sex abuse scandal when they joined Northern Michigan Baptist Bible Church in Burt Lake, which is run by Rusty Chatfield. Rebecca and her 2 younger brothers soon enrolled in the church-affiliated school, Northern Michigan Christian Academy. Once she was there, she says she befriended and would later begin dating classmate Aaron Chatfield, who was one of the pastor's 7 children. Lee Chatfield was a young teacher and coach at the school. Rebecca said he had taught her in several classes and served as an assistant coach for her soccer team. Now listen to this, Jack. Through thrice weekly church services, so they went to church 3 times a week up there, daily school lessons, regular after-school events, and frequent visits to the Chatfield family homes, Rebecca Chatfield said that the church and its founding family gave her a sense of belonging during a traumatic and vulnerable time in her life. They also instilled in her an obedience to church hierarchy, male superiority, sexual purity, and distrust of the outside world. Women were expected to marry young, have children, and obey the men in their families. She said, quote, they preach at the pulpit that the men are always right, the women have no say, end of quote.
Yeah.
Right there is Christianity summed up.
In a nutshell.
It is.
Vintage, exactly. The various Baptist churches that are sprinkled around Michigan and across the nation, pick your sexual proclivity. Because I have relatives, have close experience with corruption in the Baptist church. It's never hit the mainstream media like the Catholic sexual abuse. Millions of dollars paid off to hush victims there. Mm-hmm. But the Baptists are absolutely neck to neck with the Catholics. It's just hidden. I was at I'm not going to give you a location, southern Michigan, where the Baptist minister was preaching that you need to be more committed to your family and tithe and the whole 9 yards, until it was discovered that pastor was having sexual affairs with his secretary. And so they quickly got him removed. About a year later, I'm in the bookstore here in Grand Rapids, and there's his little red face behind the table, marriage counseling a couple. I got up and walked in his direction. He shot into the bathroom like a rabbit and didn't come out. So it's hypocrisy. Obviously, I got an iron in this fire, but it's rampant in the Baptist church. And that woman's disclosure right there, that should be broadcast.
Absolutely.
It's Taliban.
Yeah. Bridge also talked to Rebecca's mother, Debbie Newberry. She said that she moved to pull her children from the school after she and her new husband, Jeff Newberry, grew frustrated with what they characterized as the school's intensely conservative and patriarchal teachings. She was also uncomfortable with Lee Chatfield's flirtatious posture toward the school's teen girls. She said that he would lean down when talking to them or touch their shoulders. She said, quote, you just brush it off thinking, well, he's an authority, but it bothered me, end of quote. See, mothers have that gut feeling that overrides everything else. And in her gut, she knew she had to get her kids out of there, which she tried to do, but apparently Rebecca was fearful of moving to Harbor Springs and attending public schools. So she ended up staying behind. And then all of this started to happen, which is scary.
Well, stay tuned, folks, because Southpaws will keep abreast with the Lee Chatfield scandal.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
Let me skip down a little bit in this article here. Thomas Plant, a professor of psychology at Santa Clara University and an expert in church sex abuse, told Bridge, Michigan, it's not uncommon for people to avoid coming forward for years or even hide evidence of abuse, believing it to be their fault or fearful of being disbelieved or punished. She did tell Bridge that she was looking at possibly committing suicide over this.
That's not uncommon.
No, it isn't. And again, please, I mentioned phone numbers at the beginning of the show. If you're going through this, please call the appropriate hotlines. And there's been follow-up on this. Bridge ran another story on January 21st. The headline reads, Michigan school run by Lee Chatfield's family did not report past abuse claim. Which
no, they never do.
They're supposed
to. Oh, yeah, they are.
This was
no, I said they're good at it. Man, they can cover like mad.
This was a girl who is now 30, alleging that she was sexually assaulted by a teacher when she was 13 years old on a mission trip to Texas. This is unbelievable stuff. I mean, like I said, there have been updates to this. The Michigan Attorney General is now involved in the probe. The state police have raided the home of one of Lee Chatfield's former aides. They've raided the home of one of Chatfield's brothers. They executed a search warrant. That was reported on February 17th. So this isn't going to go away. And I've got a feeling that we're only hearing and reading the tip of the iceberg on this.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
It's systemic.
Yes. I would like to get to one other scumbag that we have talked about on this show, another political scumbag. He actually made national news in the past week. This is Dave Leventhal and Alan Wren writing for Business Insider, dated February 26th. Tom Norton, a pro-Donald Trump congressional candidate mounting a Republican primary challenge to Representative John Molinar of Michigan, had for months refused to file a federally mandated personal financial disclosure. Norton told Business Insider for an article published on Thursday detailing his decision's potential civil and criminal ramifications, quote, "That's none of the federal government's business," end of quote. Now Norton has changed his tune completely. In a 5-minute video posted to his campaign's YouTube account, Norton said, quote, "We're paying it, filing the financial disclosure, even though I still think it's none of the federal government's business," end of quote. In the video, he also discussed in detail his turbulent financial history. In the video, Norton said, quote, "This is getting filed because, and I am paying the $200 fine, so that way the liberals will stop crying," end of quote. No, you're paying in and filing so that your ass doesn't go to jail, you evil, violent, conservative savage. In response to an insider text message asking about his change of mind regarding the disclosure, Norton said, quote, he thought it was a rule, not a law. When your budget is 17,000 pages, it's impossible to know every law on the books, end of quote. Well, what's the old saying? Ignorance of the law is no excuse.
No excuse.
Yep. A campaign spokesman for Molinar did not immediately return a request for comment. In his video, Norton offered numerous details about his personal finances that he says will appear in his official financial disclosure. He described himself as a self-employed contractor who earned $257,713 the first year of his congressional campaign, $222,696 the second. He does own rental property in Sand Lake, of all places, where he used to be the village president. Now I'll get to that in just a little bit here. He said the rental property has an assessed worth of $100,000 to $120,000 and is completely paid off. He noted he maintained an E-Trade account with some dividend stocks and that he owns some cryptocurrency. Cuckoo! Cuckoo! In his early 20s, after he got in some trouble with some credit cards and lost his job and apartment, Norton said he reformed his financial ways and has since bought a house. Now listen who he refers to as helping him get out of his financial advice. You want to take any guesses?
DEVOS?
Nope. Who's the guy on radio that talks about financial issues?
Dave
Ramsey. Quote,
Dave Ramsey.
I'm the Dave Ramsey candidate. End of quote. Norton also acknowledged that he had a DUI from a few years ago. He's previously gotten in trouble with the law and paid fines. He didn't elaborate on the nature of the legal trouble, but I can make some guesses here. Yeah, under federal law, a congressional candidate must file financial disclosures after raising or spending $5,000 in campaign cash. That's according to federal law and House ethics guidelines. By the end of 2021, Norton had raised $113,239 according to the Federal Election Commission. Now they're talking that they could possibly prosecute him for the False Statements Accountability Act of 1996. He could go to prison for 5 years and be fined $250,000. So wouldn't that be nice if he went bye-bye?
Yeah, deserving.
Yeah.
You know, he's in the same league as the guy out in Allendale.
Yeah.
A local politician, conservative.
Yeah, Ryan Kelly. Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't talk nearly enough about Ryan Kelly. We should probably...
I got a
do
hunch
some
the
more of
future's
that.
going to have a lot of his name.
Yeah. So let's get back to Tom Norton here for a minute. I have an article. It's dated October 12th, 2018. It was published in the Cedar Springs Post newspaper by Judy Reed, who is the owner of that newspaper. By the way, they were falling on financial hard times. They have now raised money to stay in business. So that's very good news.
That is good.
Here's what she wrote back then. Some tempers are flying hot again in the village of Sand Lake after village president Tom Norton took a Sand Lake Fire Department grass fire and medical truck without discussing it with the fire chief and allowed someone in the Kurt Benson for Judge campaign to drive it in the Pulaski Days Parade on October 6th. The Cedar Springs Post got a tip about it from someone earlier this week and then called Fire Chief Ed Holtzlander to verify what had happened. According to Holtzlander, he went into the fire station Saturday and saw the truck was missing. Quote, we already had engines 6 and 7 reserved to go to Cedar Springs for the Red Flannel Parade, and now this one was missing. We use it for grass fires, but it's also our second medical truck. End of quote. He said he found out that Norton had spoken with a Department of Public Works person taking the truck. When Holtzlander saw it was missing, he immediately called Norton. Quote, I told him he had 20 minutes to get it back here or I'd report it stolen. He told me he didn't need permission to take it. End of quote. The pickup did arrive back at the building about 20 minutes later, but none of the firefighters recognized the guys who brought it back. The Post spoke to Norton about it. He verified that he did take the truck without calling Holtzlander. Norton said, quote, the chief doesn't run the fire department, the president of the village does. End of quote. Boy, doesn't he sound like another arrogant Republican asshole.
Yeah, he sure does.
He'd be right up there with Trump and death sentence. Unbelievable stuff here.
Yeah, the law doesn't apply. The law doesn't apply to the conservative dictator in Russia. You know, there's a law that says you don't go into a country and destroy or even approach nuclear power plants.
Yeah.
But the hell with that law.
Exactly.
They're above the law to the detriment of human beings.
When the Post asked why he didn't call him and let him know, Norton said, quote, the chief never calls me back anyway. End of quote. He also said he had a new phone and didn't have everyone's phone number in it. He assured the Post that it was completely legal. quote, under a general village law, a president can do that, end of quote. He also added, quote, we were asked by someone to send a truck to the parade. An email was sent out on Friday evening to the chief and council. I got no response. People have smartphones with emails popping up all the time. There's no reason not to see it, end of quote. So he's making excuses. Nothing but excuses.
And if you're talking about that conservative nature, look how he refused to drive the truck back himself and had to recruit somebody so he wouldn't get any gas back at the firehouse.
Yeah. The email was reportedly sent at 12:30 a.m. Saturday morning. Norton explained, quote, one of the reasons I delayed the email was to see if we were going to have rain. We'd had 3 days of rain, so we knew we wouldn't need it. The only time it's used is during a grass fire, so this is a complete non-issue, end of quote. But Holtzlander said that's not the case. It's also a four-wheel drive vehicle with medical supplies, and they just recently used it to get back to where someone had fallen out of a tree stand. But who was driving it in the parade? Norton said he swore a guy into the village so that he would be covered by the village insurance and legally be able to drive it. Sand Lake Village Council member Danielle Hardenberg, who, by the way, succeeded him as village president when he was forced to resign, said, quote, I'm appalled. I did some investigating and don't like what I found out at all, end of quote. So just in a nutshell, the following week he was asked to step down as village president, which he did, and they swore Danielle Hardenberg in as village president by a 5-0 vote. He basically gavelled the meeting in. They took his resignation. They swore her in as village president, and he left the meeting and said, I have better things to do. This is the kind, and by the way, there's also been allegations in the news in the Cedar Springs Post about his behavior toward women, bullying and alleged bullying and things like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is a guy that originally was going to primary Peter Meyer, but has since moved out of the district and is now primarying John Molinar.
You can't keep an ugly repug down.
Yeah. Before we head out of here, there's a couple of stories that I want to mention that we're not going to have time to get to. Maybe we'll do this one next week. I have an article from John Flesher at the Associated Press dated February 26. The headline reads, even in water-rich Michigan, no guarantee of enough for all. This story covers the drought that's happening in Ottawa County. One other story that we're not going to have time to get to is a story out of Utah. Did you hear about the 4-year-old kid that shot at police officers after his father told him to while he was being taken into custody?
I did not hear that story. In Utah, that doesn't surprise me.
The guy received an incorrect order at the McDonald's drive-thru and then brandished a firearm at employees. So they called the cops. The cops arrived and took the man into custody. While this was happening, an officer looked in the back window and saw a gun pointing out from the rear window, and a round was fired. The officer looked in the car and realized that it was the guy's 4-year-old son. The father is identified by police as 27-year-old Sadat Shamil Johnson. He is being charged with child abuse and threatening the use of a dangerous weapon in a fight. Yeah. Well, Jack, we are out of time for this week, so let's get on out of here. We'll be back next week. I'm Darren Gibson.
I'm Jack Prince.
Please support independent media and the First Amendment.
The stations that carry Southpaws do not necessarily share the opinions expressed on the show. Southpaws is protected by the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and is copyrighted by Big D Entertainment. All rights reserved.